One of the most difficult scenarios in the game of baseball is to conquer a division, win a pennant, or take home a World Series piece of metal, as our commish would say, when being hamstrung by an exorbitant contract that precludes you from supplementing the rest of the roster. So, with that said, let's delve into each franchise's worst contract and deduce whether it will keep them from winning next season. Let's roll! The Baltimore Orioles shelled out $161 million for 7 years to who they thought was their star first baseman of the future. Unfortunately, it turned out to be an albatross of the century, as Craig Davis followed up the deal by amassing an average of less than 200, while racking up the most strikeouts of any player, which also amounted to a negative WAR. Now, to be fair, far be it from me to claim they should lament the deal, since he did post multiple 50 home run campaigns, cementing himself as one of the best power hitters in the game. However, you gotta call a spade a spade. Chris Davis is on the short list of one of the worst deals in MLB history, as the Orioles still owe Chris millions for another decade after agreeing to defer the remainder owed to him, including $6 million next season. Woof. Reminiscent of the Orioles inking Chris Davis to a deal is our next player from the standpoint of an in-house player coming off multiple stellar campaigns, and that's DJ LeMahieu re-upping with the Yankees. Coming off a year where DJ won the batting title and was shaking off the notion that he was solely a product of Coors Field, it was hard to begrudge the Yankees for re-signing LeMahieu to a 6-year, $90 million pact. However, in hindsight, this deal clearly looks as though it will not at all prove fruitful, as he is coming off back-to-back substandard seasons with an average of less than a 760 OPS, and the eye test on him doesn't look any better as his athleticism is dissipating rapidly. Now, the Yankees are on the short list of squads that can throw $90 million away and still come away fine. However, it's hard to dispute DJ is not the same player. Making the case for Trevor Story as the Red Sox's albatross contract is certainly reasonable. However, for me, I'm going to tab the guy who hasn't started an entire campaign since 2017, and even when he's been healthy, has not resembled the same guy who the Red Sox signed to a $145 million deal. Not only have the Red Sox not reaped the rewards of Chris Sale's pact, but you could also strongly surmise a predominant reason as to why ownership called for a trade of Mookie Betts is because they were hampered by Sale. Chris's velocity is waning, durability is gone, and numbers have plummeted, with an ERA of over 4.5. However, now he has showed flashes of his old self in a spattering of starts, sure, but he's not even close to the same player, and the Red Sox unequivocally lament it. The Rays having an albatross contract? Yeah, okay, let's just move on. I don't want to waste your time. George Springer was the catalyst to top the lineup for the Astros' dynastic run, as well as playing platinum defense in one of the most premium positions in all of ball. And that's exactly what the Blue Jays were expecting to acquire when they signed George to a 6-year, $150 million pact. However, it just has not been the case. Although he's assimilated and integrated himself smoothly in the clubhouse, as every human in the Jays clubhouse vows how pertinent he has been in turning around their culture, but as it pertains on the field, he has been an absolute shell of himself, amassing an OPS just under 800 during his tenure, while the wheels on the bases have stopped spinning, with him not being a threat at all as a runner. Going into his age 35 season, it may be over for Springer. Now, the Minnesota Twins are an interesting team to try and peg an albatross contract associated with them. Some may say Correa after his lackluster 2023 campaign, but the fact is it's only been a year, compounded by his damn near Hall of Fame track record. I'm just not going to disparage that man by proclaiming him as such. Let's let that contract breathe a bit, as he has earned the latitude in my opinion. However, the same cannot be said for Max Kepler. Now, I'll preface with the fact that it's only a $35 million deal, but it still looks like a regrettable one for a Twins team starved for offense as they desperately inked him, hoping he could replicate 2019, a 90 RBI campaign, but he has failed to come even close since then, while accumulating an average of less than 60 since. The Detroit Tigers contract. I mean, listen, man, the deal they shelled out to shortstop Javier Baez may well go down as one of the worst of all time. No hyperbole here, not a hot take, just reality. And that's not even to mention the shortstops they passed up, including Correa and Corey Seager. Contracts like these is what personifies decrepit franchises and what makes them dregs of the league. A middling market like Detroit just simply cannot afford to swing and miss so fucking badly on a contract like this. And with still over $100 million left remaining of the 160, there's no reason to think they will be competitive with Javi on the roster playing the way he is and hindering them from allocating the money elsewhere. From a decrepit franchise to a poverty franchise, there's just not a one player you can single out on the Kansas Royals and peg as an albatross. Keep being abysmal, Kansas City. Here we go! The once all-in Chicago White Sox decided to double down on a core that hasn't sniffed a modicum of success in a decade, which resulted in them believing in a player that they had no business believing in Yoan Moncada. Now, granted, his tantalizing talent seduced me as well, as I probably would have given him a 5-year, $70 million contract as well. However, I'm not paid millions to be a general manager and to decipher which players deserve those contracts. And so for the White Sox, it has been an absolute albatross, as his sub-240 average the past 3 seasons, while racking up strikeouts at an alarming, historic rate, has destroyed this team, with him being at the top of the list as to why they have so glaringly underachieved. As we trudge along here, let's all get out of our seats while putting our hands together for the third franchise so far to not have an albatross contract on the books, with the Cleveland Guardians being yet another team run by cheap bastards. The Atlanta Braves are undeniably one of the better-run franchises in all of ball, while locking up star after star to team-friendly deals. However, if you delve deep enough, there is one contract you can uncover as an albatross for my money, as I peg Marcel Ozuna as such. Ozuna had somewhat of a renaissance last year, and if he replicates it for the remainder of his deal, I'll have to eat my words here. However, prior to this year, he was the clear weak link in the Braves' potent lineup. On some nights hitting 8th and as the DH making over $15 million per year, that's not what you would call optimal. Now, many of you may have surmised that the Miami Marlins would be the 4th team to not have an albatross contract. However, your summation would be incorrect, as they, believe it or not, have one of the worst contracts in the league on their books, an outfielder, DH, and waste of a roster spot, Avi Garcia. The Marlins, to their credit, actually went out and spent big money on a free agent to the tune of 4 for $55 as they searched for a semblance of pop in the lineup. However, Avi has been an absolute abomination, producing absolutely nothing, amounting to a complete zero to a team that just cannot afford to throw away money like that. In 2 seasons with the club, Garcia has posted a sub-200 average, sub-700 OPS, while striking out over 35% of his plate appearances. The next squad is a bit of an anomaly. They are not by any means a cheap organization, ranking in the top 5 the past 3 seasons. With that said, I wouldn't constitute the Philadelphia Phillies as having an albatross of a contract. You may disagree with Nikki C or Kyle, but hey, I disagree with you. Alright, sorry, this isn't First Take or Undisputed. Let's move on to the Mets, and boy do they have the pick of the litter to choose from. For me, I'm pegging Starling Marte as an absolute albatross, as he looks absolutely cooked. Athleticism waning and numbers are faltering. Nimmo is trending that way too, and so is McNeil, but they did post decent numbers, even if it wasn't commensurate with their contracts. Marte just looks like flat-out donezo. But hey, Steve has a gazillion dollars, so all you Met fans will be just fine. The Washington Nationals are in complete rebuild and could employ you. Congrats to the Nats for being the 4th cheap bastard. Alright, let's move on. Steven Matz was signed to be slotted as the St. Louis Cardinals' 3rd to 4th starter after the retirement of Hall of Famer Adam Wainwright, and since then all he has done was post an ERA over 5 and get relegated to the bullpen. He's in the midst of a 4-year, $44 million contract and is, without sifting through every human on every roster, I'll do that tonight, no question, but I would strongly surmise he is the highest paid long reliever of all time at 11 per year. Woof. Christian Yelich and Cody Bellinger were 1 and 2 in the MVP race in 2019. Both fell off the face of the earth the following seasons, and last year had a resurgence. The only delineation is Cody was on 1-year prove-it deals, and Yelich is on a $27 million per year pact, which concludes in 2030. As I mentioned, he was good last season, but was abysmal his first couple seasons under the deal, so in totality, man, he just has not come close to living up to the deal, and in a franchise like Milwaukee, they can't afford an overpay. The Pittsburgh Pirates with an albatross contract? Alright, moving back over to actual Major League Baseball teams, the Chicago Cubs have spent pretty wisely the last few off-seasons, resulting in a team clearly on the come with superb young talent like Morel and Steele. However, they did have one slip-up as it pertains to handing out regrettable deals in Kyle Hendricks. Kyle was a nice story from the standpoint of a pitcher who resembled a throwback Greg Maddux guy, producing well despite a substandard arsenal and lack of velocity. However, it seemed to catch up to him as he's posted an ERA over 4 the past 2 seasons, and while you're on a contract surpassing $50 million, that's not ideal. Now that Mike Moustakas, the Moose, is off the books, the Cincy Reds aren't allocating much money at all, which results in them not really having an albatross. However, they are competitive and have spent in the past, so I will refrain from calling them cheap bastards. Mariners and D-backs recently consummated a deal in which Arizona acquired Eugenio Suarez. Now, since they are paying most of his salary, even though he isn't a free agent signee, which strays away from the premise of this video, I'll indulge for content purposes and peg him as an albatross, because, all jokes aside, 6 for 66 for a .220 hitter, no on-base to speak of, is a bit hefty for my liking, despite the homers he does rack up. Arizona, however, clearly has a bright future, as they showed last season. It would be absolutely asinine and laughable for a human like me to call anyone on the Texas Rangers an albatross of a contract when they just stampeded the whole league on the way to their first ever World Series. They are a behemoth of a squad, obviously. Let's move on. Sports Scuttlebutt was not around when Robbie Ray inked his 5-year $115 pact with the Mariners. However, I hope I've built up enough equity with y'all when I tell you, believe me, when I say that day I knew that would be a ludicrous contract. He was an absolute flameout of a prospect and was dreadful with the D-backs, while quite literally producing a 5.20 ERA from 2019 to 2020. Then finally, in a contract year, scrounged together a great season with the Blue Jays, which was undeniably his only decent season of his career, let alone a great season. He got the bag and fooled the Mariners. Good for him and his agent, but he has the ability to be a number 3, nothing more. 3 long years await the M's and their fans if they ever expect him to replicate his Cy Young year. The Astros, whatever man, just keep cheating. Man, to say we could dedicate a whole video towards the Angels' misgivings would be an understatement. However, if you force me to choose just one, which remarkably is incredibly difficult to do, I'll pick Anthony Rendon and his $200 million contract. Anthony was a superstar with the Nationals and was brought over by LA after missing out on Garrett Cole to be Mike Trout's Robin, and he has been anything but. And I would surmise a part of the reason Ohtani left was because of how inept Anthony has been, leaving the franchise in such disarray. From never being on the field and the substandard play he puts on tape when he is out there, his contract will go down in infamy. And to be fair to LA, the play he put together in Washington, leading them to a World Series in 19, not sure who could have foreseen his decline. Woo! The A's aren't worthy of being mentioned. Let's move on. You could argue just sheer length and dollar value that Ohtani, Mookie, Freddie, Chris Taylor, Tyler Glasnow should be pegged as an albatross. But sans Chris Taylor, all of them are on the road to the Hall of Fame. So I refuse to disparage their names, and as it pertains to Chris Taylor, I just feel as though he has been such a vital piece to their run here as a productive Swiss Army knife, playing all around the diamond. I won't say he's an albatross either. The Dodgers are obviously a top-tier organization, and I don't feel as though they have an albatross on the books, especially with David Price now jettisoned. Jake Cronenworth was a cute story as a late-round pick, flashing on the scene in 2020, putting together an all-star campaign. However, there's a reason they are all but begging teams to take on his 70-year, $80 million pact, as the Cinderella story has waned, with back-to-back years of not even posting a .240 average. And I'm not even a dinosaur batting average human, but when you don't produce any pop and a liability on defense, call a spade a spade. His contract is obscene. As the trudging on all 30 squads albatross continues, the final 2 encapsulations for the Giants and Rockies will be swift. With the Giants, much to their dismay, as they have tirelessly tried handing out money to guys like Judge, Correa, and Ohtani the past couple seasons, I cannot honestly peg an albatross on their books, as they have just a bunch of guys on middling contracts. And as it pertains to the Rockies, candidly, I just couldn't care less. Oh, respectfully, of course. Anyways, what do y'all think about this? Any qualms? Appreciate you tuning in. If you liked it, go ahead and consider smashing the sub button. Peace!